Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this People's World Town Hall. Today, we're speaking on the possible upcoming strike of the United Parcel Services UPS. This possible upcoming strike, in addition to the show of strength by the workers of UPS, comes at a pivotal and impactful moment in history. All across the United States of America, there are workers demanding better wages, working conditions, and an overall improvement to their quality of life. In the face of the bosses and owners of these companies pushing back against these demands, millions of workers are understanding that union power is their best bet of getting the gains they deserve. There's the recent SAG after strike of 160,000 workers bringing Hollywood to a halt, the WGA writers strike, Amazon and Starbucks workers, to just name a few. These are not separate and apart happenings, but a puzzle piece in a larger picture of the history and future of organized labor and the very survival of working people. One of the most important achievements of collective bargaining in the decades following World War II is that it produced agreements that shared the gains in the productivity of the economy between workers and their employers. There is now widespread recognition that the decline in unions and their bargaining power is one of the key causes in the steady rise of income inequality and the decline of the workforce getting their share. And working people are taking note. A 2021 national opinion poll by the Gallup organization reported that 68% of Americans approve of unions, a figure that has been rising steadily over the last decade. What we have seen in that the combination of the past pandemic and stagnant wages, along with increased public support of unions and the influx of young workers into the labor movement, have changed the overall environment for union negotiations. In 2023, 150 large unions and their contracts are set to expire. The union contracts are set to expire. This covers more than 1.6 million workers. The biggest by far of these unions is the United Parcel Service, with 340,000 warehouse workers and truck drivers. People's World, just like its predecessor, the Deli Worker, has stayed on the front lines reporting on the interests of working people. It's vital in a day and age where the corporate press is being brought up by hedge fund managers and billionaires who seek to gut real journalism that the publication continues to report on these stories that matter. That's why this town hall is important. My name is Chauncey K. Robinson. I'm one of the editors of People's World, and I am so excited to get the viewpoint and share the viewpoint with all of you of rank and file workers out to the public, but to also let the public know how they can help support this cause. We have several rank and file UPS Teamster activists and a veteran from the 1997 UPS Teamster strike. You might have saw him in one of the pictures that came through in the beginning. On board to discuss the current situation as we enter the final 8 days of the current contract and what to expect if an agreement isn't reached. So I want to start off by introducing our panel and who we have here today. For the total panel that we have Josh Mendina, who is a member of the Teamster Local 243 in Detroit. Josh has been a part-time worker for 9 years and works as a preloader. We have Jason Flynn, a member of Teamster Local 705 in Chicago, who also works part-time. Kyle Cunningham, a member of Teamsters Local 509 in Columbus, South Carolina. Kyle has worked part-time at UPS for the past 8 months. And finally, we have Ben Quick, a member of Teamster Local 38 in Everett, Washington. Ben has been at UPS for 8 years as a full-time package car driver. We also have Union Teamster veteran Joe Henry, who worked for General President Ron Carey and played a part in the 19-member field operation, which worked to coordinate the 1997 strike at the United Parcel Service. Joe will now be saying a few words about this important issue. So I'm going to give it over to Joe.
Thank you, Chauncey. Very good coverage of what you just covered as far as UPS and across the country. So, as you all know, the current union contract at United Parcel Service is set to expire on July 31st at midnight. In 1997, when negotiations reached an impasse On that same day, at midnight, Teamster President Ron Carey directed all local union leaders with members at UPS to begin strike action, to set up picket lines, and prepare to communicate with the national office. It was a high stakes showdown, and corporate America was not happy. Phone calls to Congress and the White House began from all sectors of corporate America to stop the strike. For 15 days, we walked the line, reached out to our labor allies at the AFL CIO, communicated with local and national press about our fight for a full time America. It took 9 months of preparation, building unity within the ranks, establishing union solidarity internationally in preparation for the strike. On August 1st, 97, we launched our multifaceted field campaign, put picket lines in place, held on site rallies, did roving pickets, following scab drivers as they attempted to deliver partials, intensive communications with media outlets locally and nationally, encouraging community coalitions to join our fight, such as Jobs with Justice, the Rainbow Coalition, celebrities like Jesse Jackson, and many others, and making it clear that this fight was a fight for all workers. And we won, raising wages, creating 10,000 more full time jobs from part time ranks, protecting and increasing Teamster pensions, and putting an end to subcontracting. Now, here we are again. This time, though, we have veterans from the strike amongst the rank and file at UPS. We have a platform now to build upon due to that successful strike in 1997. And the number of workers at the company, as Chauncey indicated, has nearly doubled in 26 years from 185,000 to 340,000. The Teamster Strike Fund now has over $300 million in reserves. Unions from 118 countries representing UPS employees have committed to join a strike if it happens when the call is made. That's solidarity. We had that in 97. So the countdown begins now. 8 days remaining in negotiations for a good agreement, which actually negotiations begin on Tuesday. To do the same thing as before, raise wages for part timers, create more full time jobs from the part time ranks, stop forced overtime for full timers, end the two-tier wage system, which started in 82, secure benefits, pension benefits, and improve rights in the workplace. We now hear UPS is getting ready to present an offer to the union. However, the union leadership will decide whether it meets the demands of the membership and whether to put it to a vote. If the company believes, like it did last time, we need to be prepared for a fight. Chauncey?
Thank you, Joe. Really putting it in perspective just how high the stakes are with what's going on. And so now we have some multimedia stuff going on because we want to put some of this huge moment in perspective. So what we have coming up is a clip from that will be showing from 1997, which shows the attitude taken by the company attempting to negotiate directly with the members and calling on Congress and the president to end the strike. And then afterwards, we're going to talk to a few of our panelists to kind of put that in perspective, along with some other topics. So we're going to roll that clip right now.
Well, I think desperate people will do desperate things. What the company needs to do is to get back to the bargaining table. What they ought to do is start telling the truth. They are not telling the truth. They are misleading people with respect to this 10,000 jobs, with respect to the issues of the investment income. That money is monies that were negotiated for our members. It's been calculated out. It's been costed out. That money should go back into the fund as it's done now and not go into the pockets of the company.
What about you want to let your membership vote on the proposal that's on the table?
My membership, I guess if you want to use that logic, the membership could have voted what was put on the table 5 months ago. That's the company's argument here. That any time they come down with something, you should run it back to the membership. The membership knows what the vital issues are. They know it's about good, decent jobs, about subcontracting, about an attempt to put their hands in the pockets of the pension money. They know all about that. And so therefore, they have given their support by giving a 95% vote and out there 184,000 that are walking the streets today.
Mr. Kerry, the UPS is also counting on members of Congress to put greater pressure on President Clinton to intervene. What would you say to members of Congress?
I say that's wrong. I don't believe Congress should take sides in this. What I think should happen is that UPS should get to the bargaining table. That's not the way this contract will end up in a settlement. The more they try these diversionary tactics, the more they try the misleading information, that only separates the parties. What you have to do is get to the table and start negotiating an agreement that they can live with and an agreement we can live with.
Very powerful. Very powerful clip. Very fiery words that can be seen as very relevant to today. So we have after that clip, we have Josh and Ben to speak on it, along with Joe, of course, who's going to be with me throughout this panel. And I want to ask you all, what are your thoughts regarding what was said? It seems to deal with how even in 1997 there was this idea of the company trying to push one false narrative against the real needs of the workers. Do you feel like history is repeating itself in that regard? And how are UPS workers attempting to push back against these falsehoods today? And finally, what are some of the key issues that you all are fighting for and the union is fighting for in regards to the current fight?
Yeah. And
Um,
Chauncey,
I guess,
just to, yeah,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead,
just
Joe.
to jump in. I think one important thing about that clip, I remember when that happened, and it's happening again right now. We know that UPS has already encouraged companies across the country. A letter is being promoted, sent out there by the Chamber of Commerce, and these corporations are signing on, encouraging the Congress and the president to intervene if a strike should occur. So we're seeing that again as happened before. And we're also going to see when, as UPS had stated last week, they have this amazing proposal to bring back to the negotiations this coming week. So all of this is a replay before. And my opinion, Ben and Josh, Chauncey, is that this company does not want the public to see the power of the members across the country because this is a pace setter strike, if it occurs, that will change everything in this country. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's important to note since we had to deal with that before and it's happening again.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Let's go to Ben, and then we'll go to Josh on that. Ben, what are your thoughts about the clip and
Sure.
some of the other questions?
Yeah, as far as like the history repeating itself, I mean, he's in that clip urging the company to get back to the bargaining table. I mean, we just saw the company sit around for almost 2 weeks since I think it was the 5th or the 6th that negotiations broke down. And they're gonna supposedly bring us this great new offer. We'll see on Monday, but that leaves what 7 days to negotiate. I mean, there doesn't seem to be much sense of urgency from UPS on this. Um, and I mean, I'm speculating, but I would be shocked if the offer they come to the table with is what we actually want. I doubt it will meet our demands.
Hmm. And Josh?
Yeah, I think the clip was very relevant. What I would say is this: I don't think it's so much that history is repeating itself. I think that history is moving on. It's just class struggle. We could not expect a great corporation like UPS to not want to get bags and further its own greed. So it's more of history moving forward. And I'll also say this is that now more than ever it is apparent how greedy they are. So as far as the public perception, they saw how hard we worked. They saw how hard we worked during the pandemic, how we risked our lives during the pandemic, how we can't afford housing, how we can't afford to feed ourselves. They're seeing all this. It's more apparent than ever. So the public perception is on our side, and that's something that UPS has failed to do. But it's been an uphill struggle to hide their greed and their and how they're unwillingly to pay and reward the workers that made them all that profit.
Yeah, and let's speak to the hard work that was going on during the pandemic and then currently. One of the topics that's brought up is the fact of forced overtime. Who wants to speak to that? Like, and some of the specifics that you all are fighting for, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, so Josh just raised the pandemic. I mean, we work in 60, sometimes 70 hours a week, and that was something you might expect to see happen during Christmas time, but we did it for a year, 2 years, and I mean, and just this last week, I worked 3 shifts this last week that were 10, almost 12, 10 to 12 hours, um, and so the forced overtime hasn't stopped. Even taking the avenues of trying to put through grievances and whatever you can to get the company to stop forcing you to be out there longer than you want to be. It really, at the end of the day, feels like they don't care. It's better for them to overwork a fewer amount of us than to just properly staff to do the thing that we can all look at it and say, well, it would just make sense if there were more of us here, so none of us had to
Hmm.
work 12 hours.
Hmm.
But gotta get those profits, right?
Yeah. And you were saying that there's a resistance. Both of you and Josh were kind of speaking to the greed of the company. But what's interesting about that is, like you said, like if we had more workers, wouldn't that be more productive? The idea of, because then you're like also a full timer, and there's also the fight of the part timers as well, and there's
Yeah.
the question of, is there division there? Like what, what's the ways that of fighting for the whole, all of the workers, right, of this union, and trying to kind of put together like all the issues you all are dealing with, like
Yeah, I mean, I have the issue as a full timer of I would like less hours. I would like more time with my family. But I know on the
yeah,
flip side, there's part timers that would love to have more hours and also be compensated much better than they currently are. As a part timer, I know people stick around for the benefits and such, but people shouldn't be needing to get a second or third job. I'm sure Josh can speak more to it as a part timer, but
yeah.
it's absurd what folks are having to go through just to make rent, just to make get groceries, and yeah.
Josh, did you want to speak to that as a part-time worker?
Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, as well, you know, a large part of the workforce are the part timers, and they get away with giving us hardly no hours, right? Uh, Paying us a very low wage, you know, and they use that division between the tier system, right? You talk about two tiers: the driver, the full time drivers, the part time drivers, but there's also the preloaders, right? That they play in the separation of jobs to allow to allow the mistreatment of the preloaders, right? The harassment of the preloader and to really throw them around the schedule, right? Needing them to get like more than one job, uh, not allowing them for opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Joe, did
Chauncey.
you want to speak more to that? Yeah, I was just about to call on you.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I spent 9 years of my 16 years at UPS working part time, and it's terrible with what part timers have to deal with. They are forced to work as fast as possible within a 3.5 to 4 hour period. Boxes just piling up everywhere, and what we tried to do in '97, which we were successful, was to get the company to combine part time jobs so that part timers could have an opportunity to work full time, but at the same time, work on controlling the pace of the work at the same time. Because before there was only a 10-minute break for 3.5 hours or 4 hours of constant work, no air conditioning in those facilities. Uh, I can only imagine now what part timers have to deal with. So having a strong agreement with good language, and that's what the Teamster negotiation team is doing now. Is they're very focused on the 60% of the workforce, which is composed of part-timers at UPS to work on language that protects them, helps them combine part-time work so they don't have to wait 9 years or whatever to go full-time so they can take care of their families. But most importantly, too, is also to raise those part-time wages because those wages are still on starting wage are very low. And it takes 9 months to get healthcare benefits once you do start. So lots of terrible things that need to be resolved. And this reflects what's happening across the country, especially at Amazon, other warehouses, and workplaces.
Thank you. Um,
Yeah,
I think.
if I could say one,
Yeah, go ahead,
I'm
Josh.
sorry. Yeah, if I could speak, Joe brought up a good point about the 3.5 hours and the amount of work they give us. It's part time, but they cram the work in such little time that you know that we should be allowed more hours to work that work, right? So they're totally cramming the production hours into like 3.5 hours, 4 hours. And so that breeds very unsafe conditions. Like but they preach other safety, but they don't practice the safety, right? Because we're working out of our power zones. We're risking injury. And management just looks the other way all the time because they need to keep the production up. So I think one thing is important for everyone to know: it is part-time work as far as hours, but not so much about what we do. We push out a lot of boxes, and it's a hectic pace and it's a hectic pace and an unsafe pace.
You have many
Yeah, I
young
can.
families that need this type of work too, and they need to be able to survive this type of work. They need better wages. Some of the senior part timers, yes, they get the better wage, but the new part timers, the ones that have been there only months or less than a year or several years, are still held hostage with those lower wages. So clearly, the general president of the Teamsters has made it very clear that they are working very hard on the part time issues because that covers much of the abuse that's going on. Of course, there's full-time issues too with the need to put air conditioning in package cars. Of course, based upon some of the proposals, it might take 5 years to get those air conditioning units in those package cars. So they need them right away.
Yeah. And, as we start to wrap up this segment, I just want to let everyone know who's watching that you can ask questions in the chat. And a little bit later in the program, we'll be taking those questions and presenting them to our panelists as well. And I guess to just kind of finally wrap it up, there's also the talk of two-tier pay, harassment, and subcontracting. Maybe you all can speak to that a little bit and what
I'm
the
happy
issues are
to.
with that. Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, as far as like the two-tier pay, we have this other classification of driver that I'm fortunate enough that I've been there long enough that I'm a regular package car driver. I'm blessed to make more than the 22.4 drivers, but it is ridiculous. The 22.4 drivers do the exact same job as me. They are most of the time expected to work even more overtime than me. And they don't have the same protections through the grievance procedure that I have. So it's really just absurd that UPS thinks that they're going to be able to continue doing this, where they're going to have these drivers that literally do the same exact job, and they pay them something like $10 an hour less, and they just take more advantage of them.
Wow.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we're wrapping up this segment. This has been we could go on for a long time about like all these
Yeah.
issues, but we have the rest of the panel, and you guys will have a chance to come back on a little later. But thank you so much, Ben and Josh. We're gonna excuse you for a second, and then we're gonna bring on our next two panelists as we go into the next clip. So, the next clip that we're going to be talking about is a highlight of a local news story from Louisville, Kentucky, which is a transportation hub. Speaking on some of what we touched on just now, the question of what workers are asking for, and specifically part-time workers. So we're going to roll that clip right now.
The countdown is on. Just 2 weeks left for UPS to reach a deal with its union workers. With talk stalled, the Teamsters are holding rallies with rank and file employees all over the country, including right here in Louisville that you're seeing here today. Now, one of the biggest sticking points is just how much will UPS raise its entry-level pay, which is currently about $16 an hour.
People come to work and work very hard for UPS, and they're living in homeless shelters or out on the street, or they can't take care of themselves because they just can't make a decent living at UPS, even though that UPS is making a lot of money off the work that these people are doing. So it's very important for us to raise the part-time wages up, just like everybody else in America is doing these days.
You know, we're staying on top of this story because, I mean, UPS has thousands, tens of thousands of employees here in the market, and even if it's not you or somebody that you know, you're probably getting a package through e-commerce. Right. So let's bring in WDRB's business guru, Chris Otts. Chris, yep. We've gotten a closer look at how huge this effect would strike would potentially affect the people at home. Tell us more about this.
Well, I mean, basically, what we can say is that if you rely on e-commerce, you know, your packages may be delayed. It's possible that they won't, but almost all experts agree that FedEx, the post office, other carriers out there cannot take all of that package volume from UPS if the workers were just to walk out. Of course, UPS will try to keep things going. They say they're training their management to step in and load those cars. But the Teamsters have some powerful allies. They talked today at their rally about the pilots. You know, this is one of probably the most important hub in the UPS network is right here in Louisville. And those pilots are not going to be flying planes. So the supervisor, you know, management pilots may be able to step in. They may be able to rely on contractors. But basically, come August, you may expect some delays in getting things to your doorstep if this strike comes to pass, and of course we don't know if it will.
That's a really interesting point. I hadn't heard that yet, that pilots would not.
Yes, they've confirmed. And in 1997, not a single pilot of about 2,000 of them crossed that picket line. They did not work a single hour while the Teamsters were on strike.
That could have a huge, huge impact because there's not enough management to take over for 330,000 rank and file.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so
Awesome. So we're going to bring on, and we have brought on, Jason and Kyle to speak on this clip. And thanks for joining the panel. And so the clip speaks to wanting to lock into the contract that part-time workers are guaranteed north of $20 an hour, although they didn't want to specifically say 25. What are your thoughts on that demand, and if it properly compensates those of you on the job who do part-time work? And maybe you can give us some insight into what your regular week looks like on the job and the obstacles you face. And maybe Joe can also speak to like your time and job. Like you spoke a little bit about it, like the different, what was going on with the part-time workers and the full-time and the need for compensation and whatnot. So did you want to go first, Joe? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I probably better because I'm the old one here. So starting in 1976 is when I started UPS. In 1982, for those of many of the people who are listening right now, that is when UPS proposed a two-tier wage system for part-time work. And that was such a terrible proposal. The rank and file pushed hard to oppose that, but it did pass in 1982. It was a terrible thing that continued to roll on. In the starting wage at that point, which continued on afterwards, was $8 an hour. Now, I am not sure what the starting wage is now. I know that our two rank and filers are going to note it now, but we have been, the union has worked hard over the years, and especially in 1997, that was part of negotiations was to increase the starting wage because the wages that part-timers were making prior to 1982, who were hired prior to 1982, continued to get higher. I think by the end of the 80s, it was up to about $15 an hour. Now, here we are now in the twos in 2023, and we still have part-timers starting out at less than $10 an hour. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So this is very abusive. Again, since UPS has 60% of the 340,000 workers, or over 200,000 who are part time. Uh, this is very abusive. The wages need to be increased. Workers cannot survive on this. When those of us who were part timers in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, uh, we could afford to work part time and at least pay bills, pay for rent, take care of things. If we needed to get a second job, we did. But the wages were much better then. And this company can afford it. This is a very lucrative company, the billions that this company makes. And they know that. They pride themselves, they say that they are the pace setter of the industry when it comes to wages, but they're not. And if they are the pace setter, then this needs to change. It needs to change at UPS, needs to change at Amazon, and many other workplaces across the country. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, and a good 2 cents. So Kyle, let's start with you first. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. For like, I'm the increase of wage is a good start and everything, but I think the main thing I'm looking forward to is like having a way for part-time workers to become full-time workers because like yeah, from like I make $17 an hour, so that 17 to like 20 or 25 would be good. But obviously, like seeing my hours go from like 3 to 4 hours, jump up to like actual 8 hours would see like probably more money than just jumping up to 20 by itself. Because also like as a part-time worker, I've seen people like every month, even though I've only been working for 8 months so far. Every month I see like we hire like 3, 4 people who come on and start working or are excited to work. But by the time the end of the month comes, like all of them except for like maybe one, but most sometimes even all of them have like moved on from the job because it just wasn't giving them enough money,
Wow.
and so they had
Yeah.
to look elsewhere.
Yeah. Jason?
Yeah, I want to echo what Kyle said, also a bit what Ben and Josh said before. Um, right now, for part timers, like I'm, our minimum around Chicago is around $16 an hour. Some people in our area make up to $24 an hour, and I have friends, you know, because of Chicago, who even on that are houseless and have had to move away and get different jobs because they couldn't afford to work at UPS on that piece. So for our part here, but also around the country, we're really working to try to set the minimum, the absolute floor, as $25 an hour for part timers. We don't want to see anything below that, or we're going to send that contract back. And there's a lot of drivers and there's people around the country that I think have that support. And I think what's crucial to that is, like Joe said, back in 1982, the wages were tiered off. So part timers now make a significantly different rate than either of the driver classifications. And we see the $25 an hour minimum as just the first step to being able to rectify that mistake back in the 80s. It's what we need to stabilize people, to get people in a position to be able to organize, to cut down on the employee churn and attrition at UPS that UPS frankly thrives on. That allows them to absolutely plunder our communities. And we need to put a stop to that immediately.
Yeah. And there, what's interesting is that going by the news clip, there was like this hesitancy even to mention $25. Yet, this idea that that's what's needed. There's been a stagnation of workers' wages for decades now, and that there's this hesitancy to even bring that about. And speaking of, like, you all talked about it, the idea that this company can actually afford it, right? Like, there's not like they're screaming poor mouth, but that's not what the case is. Maybe Joe, you can give a few like stats about like some of these investors and whatnot. So the mask is off
Right.
about
Right.
the
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Chauncey. It's if folks have been following some of the UPS discussions on TikTok, there was one young person who brought up the fact that when they looked at the billions of dollars that the company made, they did an analysis of that, and they said if we took all these billions that the company made and then, of course, paid all the expenses, we could actually pay every worker there over $100,000. Now, of course, that's not happening right now. They're not doing that. Why are they not doing that? Because in the 90s, UPS decided to sell their stocks out in the public arena. And so you have these investment groups such as Vanguard who own major shares of UPS, and they are making tons of money, millions of dollars of money in their investment. And they do not want the company to pay the workers more. And of course, that's what this negotiations is all about. Enough's enough. We need to make sure that the people who create the wealth for this company get their fair share. So it's time to distribute that. This is the wealthiest transportation company in this country and, of course, across the world. It needs to do the right thing. And the Teamster Negotiating Committee is going to make that very clear this coming week.
Awesome. And Jason, you wanted to jump in on that?
Yeah, I just want to echo that because this company has made over $13 billion in profit both of the last 2 years, and they're standing to do that again this year. They have more than enough money to pay us what we deserve to make. And one of the really big issues is that like UPS publicly has been trying to present these jobs as like long-term jobs that people can have. They present these as good jobs, but frankly, like part-time work at UPS is absolutely horrendous. In my facility, a week doesn't go by where we don't have at least one or two people injured. They are constantly trying to cut people's shifts. Most people are working one shift a week if they have lower seniority, and lower seniority is like if you've been there 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you could still be getting cut from your shifts. Your paychecks come back, and you don't have enough money to even drive or take transit to and from the facility that you work at. In most cases, you're losing money if you go in every single day. And so this is the kind of thing that we like really need to put a stop to, both on the shop floor and through this contract mobilization. One other thing to put in there: the long-term ability of people to keep these jobs is significantly impacted by these injuries. Because if you get injured, your workers' compensation settlement rate, if you even go through with workers' compensation after all of the harassment the company puts you through, is based on your extremely low wage. So oftentimes you're losing money on a workers' compensation process after you get a settlement, which just continues to contribute to the massive employee churn at these places. It's horrendous.
Yeah, in Chauncey, I'm sorry. One thing to really note here, some really good takeaways here is as of July, as of this month, the company's market capitalization is $153.96 billion. $153.96 billion. Institutional investors make up over 72% of UPS stocks. The Vanguard Group owns over 67 million shares of UPS and has a 9.3% stake in the company. Then comes BlackRock, and then the shareholders. They all make tons of money and they need to share it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's also just the point that was noted earlier that it's 60% of the workers are part time, right? So that means 60% are darn near living in poverty. And it's like, how is that sustainable? Of course, that's sustainable to them because they think, y'all just, like a will just keep coming in. But clearly, that's not got to work for everyone. So, as we wrap up this segment, are you all optimistic for you know, Ben earlier, he was saying he wasn't too optimistic that they were going to give the right kind of response. But what are your thoughts, and what are your thoughts going forward, depending on what they offer?
So
Al? Yeah.
I think, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if they'll give us the right thing or not, but I guess that's what the strike is for. So I'm optimistic. Even if they don't give us the right thing, we'll be able to see it and be able to, look forward from there on and be like, oh, if we want to strike or not. So I am looking forward to like if we can't get what we need, but at the very least we can strike. I think that most of the people in the country are behind unions like ours.
Yes. And we'll speak to some of the things that and a little bit later, and also make sure to send in your questions if you have any. But we'll speak to what people who support this movement can also do to help out. Jason, did you want to say anything before we, move on to the next segment?
Yeah, I guess on the part about being optimistic, I think the company, I mean, I don't have a ton of perspective on this, honestly, but the company has consistently tried to use divide and conquer tactics amongst the workforce here at UPS. They've tried to put part-time workers and full-time workers against each other. I think the full-time workers are absolutely in full solidarity with part-time workers and vice versa. And I think that if the company continues to use divide and conquer tactics, that they're trying to undersell part-time workers, they try to sell us out. then we're going to take these people on strike, and they're going to see what worker power really looks like. They have every opportunity to come back to the table with a good offer, but if they don't do it, we know how to teach them a lesson.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Jason and Kyle. So, okay, so we're going to get into they're going to stick around in the background for a little bit because we're going to have some questions from the audience, and depending on, who we Jason and Kyle are going to stay on for a little bit, actually. And then we'll have others come on as well. And so we have some questions from you all, and there's because that chat is popping. Like, I am seeing all of these questions, a lot of solidarity, a lot of people really appreciative of this town hall, and for you all, being here today. So that's awesome. And so, let's talk about some of the questions that came up. One of them is, will there be pickets at UPS stores if there is a strike? Joe is
No.
shaking his head no.
Yeah,
Maybe,
technically,
elaborate that.
yeah, we don't have lawyers here, but uh, there, it's a yes, no, maybe. If there's a delivery truck, a UPS truck that is being driven by a scab or a manager, there will be an opportunity for strikers to set up a picket uh, in the area if it goes over to that facility. But what I would say in regards to completing that question is, and I meant to say this earlier, is when it comes to the different types of picketing, what members can do, what UPSers can do, is we need you to consult with your local union leadership. They are being advised right now. Actually, I was at a union meeting this morning here in Des Moines where where the national union had sent in a person to go over the different things to be prepared for, what members should do when they're on strike, what to do if you're following a truck from the UPS facility to a business such as the business that was just brought up, one of the UPS vendors. But there's some guidelines on that, some very specific guidelines. So to answer that question completely, we encourage folks who are Teamsters, UPSers, to please contact their Teamster local and to get direction from them at the point that a strike would occur. And those trucks are going out there by scab drivers or management at those type of facilities at those vendors.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna also connect it to this other question that we came in. Is someone asked, if a scab delivers a package, should we refuse to accept it?
If you are a member of the public, you have your rights. You do not have to accept the package. And we would encourage the public, and this is where the public campaign comes into effect,
Which we'll
is
get into. Yes.
yes. So we need the community to really support our brothers and sisters at UPS, and to make it clear to the company that they support the strikers, not the company. And if they have the opportunity to refuse shipment, they should. I mean, that would help. If it's not something that's of the utmost nature, if it's not medical supplies, something important that they need to have, if it's something, pair of pants, a new game or whatever, send it back. Tell them you don't want it. I mean, and then spread the word.
Yeah. Jason, Kyle, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I know that the UPS stores are technically independently operated, so it's less likely that you'll see pickets there. But people have every opportunity to reach out, again, like Joe said, to Teamsters locals, but also political organizations that have members that are involved in a rank and file fashion, and that have more information. People can contact, like, Democratic Social America, Teamsters for a Democratic Union, to see like what situations look like locally as well. Not every local is uniform. Not everybody's going to get back to you. Not every chapter of any political organization is going to get back to you. But many of them have, like, strike ready pledges. They have trainings to support strikers on picket lines, and they have the sort of local connections that people are looking for, especially if it's their first time going out to a picket line, to teach people how to support in that sort of fashion.
Awesome. And then another question that we had is, how can people in rural areas, small cities, take action to support the Teamsters?
There is a letter writing campaign that's going on right now that the National Union has already sent out by email, and I foresee us sending that out too, is where you can sign online a letter that would go to your elected leaders in Congress to urge them to not intervene in the strike. So that is one of the important ways. A number of us have already done that in different areas. And our senators in Congress and representatives have already been contacting us back to ask for more information about what they need to do to make it clear to UPS to negotiate with the Teamsters. So that is one of the big things. A letter writing campaign is very important, and those links I'm sure that we'll be sending out. Where at the very least, contact your member of Congress right now. Urge them to say to the company or say to the president that we will not intervene. We will not intervene.
Yeah. Okay. And another question is, what can other truckers who don't want to be scabs but could get the loads assigned do in support?
That's a legal question, and depending on whether or not they're a union operation and whether or not there is language in their contract, if they're part of a union, they need to really check with a Teamster local near them and then ask them what they can do. Now, if they're non-union, that's a whole different operation. If they're owner operators, there's different things they can do just based upon uh, uh, if they're independent or not. But really, again, connect with a Teamster local in your area to ask for more information on what you can do, especially if you are part of a unionized company where you may have some language that protects you if you are in that type of situation. But we're unable to answer that legal question right now.
Yeah. And then I have a question in terms of kind of putting this in the bigger perspective. I know I talked about it a little bit earlier, but how do you all feel this moment with the UPS workers is connected with the other workers and their jobs, attempting to bargain for better working conditions? Do you see this as a reckoning of sorts of a system where workers are finding it difficult to live comfortably on their wages? And what kind of connections are you making to this moment that you're standing in? Maybe
I
Kyle,
mean,
if you
I could
want to
take
go
this
first.
one. Oh,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I've been going around talking to other unions. Like just recently there was a meeting at with the USSW, the Service Workers Union, and of course I went there to show my support. And all of them always had questions for me like, oh, how can I support the union or whatnot for the UPS to give me more information on the strike and whatnot. So there's a lot of people who are ready to strike, whether they be in service work or with UPS, and they're also willing to like help each other out and stuff like that. So I think it is like a reckoning throughout like the entire country of workers all coming together to support one another.
Thank you, Kyle. Jason?
Yeah, I think that's an incredible point. I think this is a potential point for a real like fulcrum point for workers around this country. I think all of the multiple efforts around Amazon facilities around the country from multiple different unions, including the Teamsters, indicate that. I think the input of like Starbucks workers that has been like a massive expansion of workplace democracy into like the food service industry around this country has been an incredible example of that, and a really hard uphill battle that they have still going forward. And I'm hopeful that we can take this energy from whatever happens, whether we have a strike or not, and turn that into a like iterative, a like learning, a reflection like process that people can pick up and learn from and use in their own facilities and industries. And I hope that, you know, people that have these questions about, oh, like, am I able to support a strike? Should I pick up packages or not at a facility? And all these questions around, you know, individual contracts and stuff like that. I think that this is a really good opportunity and a really good point to bring bring this up with your co-workers and start organizing in a rank and file manager. If you're at a DSP at FedEx, if you're at Amazon, if you're at one of these sorts of facilities, reach out to organizers in your area and, start a rank and file campaign, bring your coworkers together and build on this. Use this as a talking point around people.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and
Thank you.
this is a very unique period of time. This UPS negotiations, what's the uh, uh, the publicity surrounding what's going on right now, it's very visible. Everybody knows their UPS driver, especially. So the discussions going on right now, the community is very aware of the hard work that UPSers do, the deliveries that they make. And then, as you said, Chauncey, beforehand, 69% of the public supports unions. This is a very unique period. So with the public element of UPS, the workers, the amount of workers, 340,000. This is a pay setter type of negotiation effort right now. Whatever happens, if it is a strike, I foresee that there's going to be tremendous support from communities for UPSers. There's going to be phone calls made to UPS to get back to the table, give a better offer. There's going to be many members of Congress who will refuse to accept this proposal that UPS might throw out there if it's the wrong proposal. Of course, we'll know if the Teamsters rejects it. So lots of community support. There'll be lots of participation. And I think everybody knows clearly that what happens during this time, during this next 8 days, will have a tremendous impact upon all working people. And let's not forget, this is a fight for a full time America. Again, 60% of the workforce is part time at UPS. We need many of those part timers to have the opportunity to go full time. We need many of those jobs to be combined from the part time ranks. So this is a fight for everybody.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a good segue into, because this is a fight for everyone. And we already touched on it a little bit, but like some, like, ways that people, the public in general, maybe if they're not even getting a package, like maybe pushing back against certain narratives and things like that, like, oh, you're not going to get your package, be mad at the workers and whatnot. Like, how can the public really support this? Let's go to you, Jason.
I think, sort of like I said before, find an organization that can get you in touch with workplaces around UPS in your area. And donate to a solidarity fund would be my secondary ask. If you feel like you don't have the opportunity to make it out or get your friends out or things like that, pick this up as a talking point in a hobby group, like whether you have a board game night, if you have a bowling league, if you like go out to baseball games with people, if you play softball with a bunch of folks, whatever you do. Pass the hat around and donate to a solidarity fund, text your friends, and if there's a picket line, find out where it is and go get out to it. And use that as an experience to, start like a base for better organizing, for organizing further beyond this fight, whether it's supporting like, the United Auto Workers potential strike after this UPS fight, or organizing in your own place through something like the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee. This is a starting point for people. This isn't the end point.
It's a really great starting point, not the end point. Definitely. Kyle?
I would just say, like, if people hear like the narratives, like there's probably going to be, especially like on TV and whatnot, they'll be saying like, "Oh man, you're not going to get your packages or whatnot." I just want
Mm-hmm.
people to like push back on that narrative whenever they hear, whether it be like in person or online. That it's not the workers that are holding people's packages back, but it's actually UPS that's doing this, since they're the ones who won't pay their workers, so which allows us to, work and live so we can get their packages to them.
Definitely. Joe?
Oh, lots of things, especially with what the brothers just said. But the public campaign is, again, contact your elected leaders. Go to city council meetings, pass resolutions condemning UPS for not giving the workers a good contract or a good proposal. If again a strike happens, write letters to the editor in local newspapers. Uh, Contact your local TV station, radio station. Let them know you stand with the workers, that you know what this is about. This is a fight for a full time America, good wages included, and that you are going to stand with them, maybe spend some time on the picket line too. Members of the community, you're welcome to join the brothers and sisters at UPS facilities across the country if you want to walk the line. But ask the local union leaders there in the Teamsters what you can do. If you're a member of another union, again, provide resolutions, put forth donations to the members. Like was stated before, there's about $300 million that the Teamsters have set aside in their strike fund, but that could run out in a couple weeks. That's the other thing too is do we foresee a strike lasting more than a week or two? Highly unlikely with the amount of money that will be lost. Nearly $1 billion a day will be lost by UPS if a strike happens. So clearly, I think what's important now before August 1st is get on the phone, call your elected leader, let them know that you are standing with the workers. Do it now, do it tomorrow. And again, members of Congress even do state legislatures too. In contact a Teamster local, ask them what you can do.
Thank you, Joe. And I think that's a perfect segue to kind of we went through a lot. Like it's so much going on and it's packed full. The stakes are high. There's a lot happening. The countdown is on. And I just really appreciate this conversation because I learned some new things and we really tackled some topics and I hope those of you who watched also did that. So I want to give Joe a few minutes to kind of summarize what we were talking about in the road forward.
Yeah, thank you, Chauncey. As stated before, this is going to be a pace setter type of effort that's going on right now. What happens, this is part of the 1.6 million workers with contracts expiring this year, about 150 major contracts. After this are the big three automakers, and then there's healthcare facilities too over on the west and the south. But what happens at UPS within the next 8 days, and if a strike occurs farther on, will determine how everything else goes in negotiations with these other unions. And even though there has been a decline in union membership since the 80s, we have seen an uptick over the last couple years in union organizing. Clearly, workers are angry. They feel that they've not gotten their fair share. Many workers, like UPS workers, meatpacking workers, and other industries that had to continue to go to work during the pandemic, are very upset because of the lack of support that they received by their companies, even though those companies were continuing to make record profits during the pandemic, while at the same time workers were getting sick and seeing their brothers and sisters possibly die. So things have changed. They've changed over the last several years. And so clearly now, the word is out, get engaged, be involved. We have younger workers now involved in this effort. So things are changing, and I'm tremendously hopeful that we will get a good contract at UPS if workers stand united and connect with local groups and also other unions to support the workers.
Yeah, and I think just in conclusion to say, we're hopeful because we have hope in the workers that they're going to make sure whether they do it or not, like Jason's shirt says, we're ready to strike if we have to. Correct. So, and that's just, really powerful. And so, we talked about some of the things that are being fought for, and all of these things are to help increase the stability and quality of life of its workers. We can hope that the bosses listen, but as this panel shows, and from what we've seen, the workers are strong and ready to exert their power for these important gains. And I would also say, keep your eyes at People's World because we'll be continuing to cover this super important topic along with all the interests of working people because our interests are your interests and working class people. Thank you for joining us.